Hello, what we're going to be covering in this video is Lesson 1.8 from App Development with Swift. Lesson 1.8 covers Interface Builder Basics. The video is part of a lecture that was recorded in spring of 2019.
So what we're going to look at next is we're going to focus a little bit more on the interface builder. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and click on my main storyboard. So I will just go ahead and click on that. And when I click on that, basically what this is, it's the first screen that appears when you go ahead and run your app. And one of the ways you can tell that is that you have the little arrow pointing to that first screen. So that's basically your entry point into your app. The other way you can go ahead and tell is that this is the main.storyboard. So if you go ahead and click on the Getting Started file way up in the top left, and main interface, basically that's where that main is set. So basically what we're using is we're using the main storyboard as our main interface right there for the app. So let me go back into the storyboard, our main storyboard again. So what we have here is our actual document outline view. So we've kind of looked at that. You can go ahead and expand or contract what's in below at the lower levels if you want to. And you can hide it. If you go to the left of View as iPhone 8 in the bottom left-hand corner, if you go ahead and click on that little icon, what that'll do is that'll hide your document outline. And so if you ever run into the case where that's hidden and you want to show it again, you would just click on that icon to open it back up. So we'll go ahead and open it back up. So what it does is it displays each one of your view controllers, and as you can have an unlimited number of view controllers that you can work with with your app. And each one of those view controllers would be a separate screen in the app that you're actually running. So if you're running an app that actually has like a contacts list, the first screen shows all your contacts, then you could press on a contact and edit the contact. That would be a separate view controller that would run that information. So basically, as you create more views, apps that have additional views, you would add additional view controllers, table view controllers, different types of controllers to your app. The reason why this is called a single view app is because we only have one view controller on it. And we usually start with this one as the basis of building all of your other applications. Okay, so what we're going to do next is up in the upper right-hand corner, there's a little round circle and a square within it. And if you mouse over it, it's called the library. So what we want to do is we want to go ahead and click on that. And what that shows you is the object library. So I already searched for something in here. So yeah, so what you have here is you have all of the various objects that you can go ahead and drop down into your storyboards. So it's a whole ton of stuff that you can go ahead and use within each one of your scenes. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and within the search box, we're going to type in button. So let's just go ahead, type in BU, and we should have a button, the top one. So what you want to do to add it to our view controller we want to go ahead and click on our button, left click on the button, and then just drag it over and drop it onto our actual view. And this thing is, so what I have here is I've dropped a button down into my view. It finally dropped in. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and drag it into the upper left-hand corner for now. And what you'll see is you'll actually see the margin lines when you drag it along. If you drag it horizontally or vertically, you'll eventually get to where the midpoint is for both your vertical and your horizontal axis. So if I drag the button down further, right next to the arrow, you can see both your horizontal and vertical axis, and I have it kind of centered over that. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and drop it in my application, kind of above, on the center above the arrow. So I'll just go ahead and drop that button in. So we've added our button. So now what we're going to do is we're going to look at the various different items that are in over to the right. So the first one, the little show the file inspector, basically what that does is it just shows the actual file that we're working in. So we're working in the main storyboard. If you click on the question mark, basically for whatever control you have selected, we have currently have our button selected. It'll come up with information about what the button is, and then you can open it in the developer documentation. So that'll go ahead and take you to the Swift API. The next item to the right of the question mark is the identity inspector, and it allows you to edit the properties related to an object's identity, such as the class it belongs in. By default, a button is a member of the UI button class. So when you're working with specific object types, you'll probably not be editing what type of class they are actually in, but you will be, when you're working with your view controller, you may be updating the actual class of it. So the next one over to the right is the attributes inspector. And this is where you can go in and change a lot of the properties for the actual button. So it's just the next one over to the right. And you can change the button's text, the text color, the background, and the alignment as you scroll through the various items. And each one of these properties that you see in here, you can actually go in and change it in your code if you wanted to. So if you wanted to change the color of a button when your code ran, you could actually enter that into your code, and it would change the code, the title of your button, the color of your button, whatever you wanted to do. The next one over to the right is the little ruler. So that's our size inspector. So basically what that does, the view, the width of it is 46. The height of it is 30. That's the size of our button. And then it's letting us know where on the XY coordinate that button's upper left-hand corner is at. So basically, you'll use the XY fields where the top left of the screen corresponds to your 0, 0. So the 0, 0 is in the top left of your screen. The X value gets larger as you move the element to the right, and the Y value gets larger as you move the element down on the screen. And then you can adjust the padding around the button's title or image. So each one of our objects will have different properties that you can go ahead and mess around with and set. And then finally, we're going to go ahead and click on the little circle with the right arrow. And basically what that is, it's the connection inspector, and it lists all the functions and variable names related to the object. So currently our button isn't connected to anything, so we won't see any connections. So what we're going to do next is we're going to add some additional items to our view, and then we will go ahead and add some outlets to connect those items so we can go in and use them in our code. So the other thing I wanted to mention, if you go ahead and look at your document viewer, when you add an item to the screen, it'll also show up in that document viewer. So a button is currently on top of our main view. So what we want to do next is we want to go ahead and make sure our button is selected. So, and then we want to go into our attributes inspector, and what we're going to do below title, we want to go ahead and change, we don't want it to show button. What we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and type in press for greeting. So after we type that in and hit return, basically our button expands so it shows the full text of that. So that's the text that actually appears on our button. So the next thing we want to do is we want to make sure and click back on our view over in the left-hand corner under our view controller. So we'll go ahead and select our view. And then we want to go into our object library, and what we're going to look for is a label. So I will go ahead and type in label into that box. And I will go ahead and drag that down, and what I want is towards the top of my screen. So I'll go ahead and drag and drop my label. Did you get that, Pam?
No.
Oh, okay. So you need to go ahead and click on that one right there. No, that one. Yeah, so that's our object library. So you could just go ahead and type in label. Yep, and then you can just left click on it and drag it onto the view. There we go. And position it up above a little bit. Okay. Okay, and what we're going to do in our label is we're going to type forward right below the text field is the actual what gets displayed in the label, and we're going to go ahead and change that to enter your name and hit enter. And then what we should see are labels resized. I'm just going to go ahead and put it so it's kind of in the center of my screen. So labels are usually used for is to display text that you can actually not go in and update, or to display results. So what we're going to do next then is we're going to go ahead and look for a text box. So we're going to go back into our object library and type in text, and what we want is a text field. So that's what we want to select. There's both a text field and a text view. The text view, you're able to see multiple lines, whereas the text field, you're able to send an action message to a target. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to left click on my text, and then just go ahead and drag and drop that box under enter your name. And then finally, I'm going to go ahead and add one more label. So I'll go back into my object library, type label back in, and I'll just go ahead and drop it below my text box. And after I drop it below my text box, what I want to do is I want to go into my attributes inspector, and we're going to change a couple properties. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to delete label. So we'll just go ahead and select it and hit the delete key. And the next thing we're going to do is we're going to change the font. So over to the right of font, there's a little T, and you want to go ahead and click on that little box. And what we want to do is we want to change the style of the font. So we're going to go ahead and select bold for the style. And we will go ahead and increase the font size to a 24. And then we'll click on done. And basically what it'll do is it'll display it in a 24-point font, bolded, when we actually display something in that box. When you remove the label's kind of shows up kind of funky in your app until you actually get some information that gets added to the app itself. Okay, so we've added all the controls we want for our app. So the next thing we need to do is we need to add outlets from the actual scene to our code so we can go ahead and update those, update our given action to our button, update the text in our label. So in order to do that, what we want to do is we want to click on the assistant editor. So it's the two intertwined circles up above. And if we go ahead and click on that, then what should show up is the code related to this view controller. So basically that shows up. So now we actually have the code there. So in order to use any of these, our text field, our button, our label in code, we need to make a connection between the actual control and our code. And those are called outlets in Swift. So the first one we want to do is we want to go ahead and click on our text box. So we'll go ahead and click on our text box. And then we want to go ahead and click on your left mouse key and the control key. And what we want to do then is we want to drag to the right. There's a blue line that appears. And what we want to do is we want to drop it in below our class. So in my case, I'm just dropping it in on line 12. So after you go ahead and release it, you can go ahead and set it up how you want to set it up. So this is we're gonna set this up as an outlet. So what I want to do is our connections and outlet, we need to specify a name. So what I'm going to specify for the name is just a name text field.
When you highlighted that button, what did you press besides control?
The left mouse key. So if you go ahead and click on that, you have to hold down the key though. Yeah, the left mouse key. So go ahead and click and then hold down the left mouse key and then drag. There we go. You get right up above the class, right there. Yep. Oh, yep. And then you can go ahead and change that to name text. So we've added our outlet to our text field. So the next thing we want to do is we want to add an outlet to our label, greeting label below our text field. So we'll go ahead and click on our label. And then a lot of times it's easier to go ahead and click on the actual control in your pane, document manager pane, instead of trying to click on a little label that's right there. So again, I'm a control left click and drag over. And I'm going to go ahead and drop in a new outlet. And what I'm going to call this is greeting label field. And click on connect. And now I have a couple of outlets in there. Hit enter a couple times. And then the final thing we're going to do is we're going to control click from our button. So we're going to go ahead and select our button, and then we'll control and drag over into our code again. And in this case, this is not going to be an outlet. It's actually going to be an action. So what we want to do is we want to go ahead on that connection type. We want to select action. And then for the name, we're just going to call it button pressed. And then the type, I always like to change the type. For some instance on the action, it'll default to any. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change it to an UI button. And then the event touch up inside, that's fine. So I will go ahead and click on connect. So we've added all of our connections. So we have a connection. When you add an outlet, if you see a circle within another circle, that means that that outlet is connected. So what we've done is we've created 3 outlets. So if you were still had the button selected, and if you went up in the upper right-hand corner and clicked on the circle with the arrow, what that'll do is that'll show you exactly what outlets have been specified for that control. So what we have here, we have touch up inside. It's a view control. It's in the view controller, and the name of it is button pressed.
Before we run our app, we need to go ahead and add some code to our button pressed function so that when the user presses the button, it will display a greeting that contains the word hello and the name that was entered in our name text field. So what I'm going to do first is I'm just going to go ahead and close down my code window. And before I do that, I need to change a couple of properties for my greeting label field. So let me just go ahead and select that. The first one I want to do is I want to change the size for it. So I want to go ahead and add a 200 width and a 30 height. And then after I've done that, what I want to do is I want to go into my attribute inspector for my label, and I want to make sure that the text in the label is centered. So I'll go ahead and click on the center button. So after we've done that, I can open up my view controller. So what I want to do in my view controller is I want to go ahead and add some code so that when the button is pressed, the text appears in our greeting label field. So what I'll type in is I'll start typing in my greeting label field, hit enter, then what we need to do is there's a text property for all labels. That's where I want the text to appear. And then what we're going to do is we're going to just add the greeting hello with the space. So there's a space between the greeting and the user's name. And then we'll just concatenate the text found in the name text field. So I'll just go ahead and type in name text field. It'll appear. I'll just go ahead and hit enter. And again, if you haven't guessed, there's a text property where that text is found. So I'll just go ahead and pull that information from the text field. And what we see next is we actually see a compile error. So I'm just going to go ahead and press on the little stop sign. So a value of optional type string must be enwrapped to a value of type string. We will be talking about optionals in a future lesson. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and use the second fix that they recommend. So I am going to use the bang operator, which is the exclamation point, to force unwrap our text that the user entered into the name text field. So I will just go ahead and click on that button. And what I want to do next is I want to go ahead and start up my simulator iPhone 8, so I'll just click on the stop button or start button to get it started. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and pause this for a few seconds until the actual simulator comes up. Okay, the simulator has loaded, so the first thing I need to do is I need to enter a name. So I will just go ahead and left click in the text box, and I will just type my name in, and then I will press the for greeting button. So when I press it, it goes ahead and displays our greeting of hello, Mike. So that's all I wanted to cover for this lesson. So we will talk to you later.